students, this is Sonamit Lepcha from Fateh Public School. Today we are going to discuss the lesson in English for the students of class 12. The title of the chapter is The Last Lesson, written by Alphonse Daudet. Before we begin with the chapter, I would like to explain to you about the writer. Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist and short story writer. During France-Prussian War, he enlisted himself in the French army, but due to his ill health, he got back to his home and started writing the stories and the novels, and that was his work or the job till the end of his life. Before we begin the main chapter, I would like to give you the background of this story, The Last Lesson. So the background is the Franco-Prussian War, which happened in the year 1870 to 71. France was defeated by Prussia, led by Bismarck. Here you see in the image Bismarck, and during the war, France was defeated by Prussia, and the two districts of France that, as you see in the map, Lorraine and Alsace, had to be handed over to Germany. So from that on, the two districts of France belongs to Germany. So what happens after the war? Wherever, it may be in any parts of the world, if war happens, there would be always impact of war. So here too we see in the lesson the two main impacts, that is on social life and linguistic identity. In social life, what happened is that people were driven to poverty, hunger and sickness and unemployment. Whereas in the other side we see the linguistic identity. Even their own mother tongue was taken away from them. In many of the educational institutions, they were compelled to follow German. So that's the background of the story. So here we begin the two main protagonists or the characters of this story, and they are mainly M. Hamel, who was a teacher and very strict as well as very disciplined, very passionate about teaching, and he was also a patriotic. And we also see a small young boy who was very active, very sensitive and very honest, because in this story he accepts that he didn't learn his lesson. Now the story begins. On the start of the day, the boy starts his school very late, and as he was going along, he finds some Prussian soldiers marching on the road. Seeing the scenery around, or so to say the atmosphere around, very calm, very pleasing, he was quite tempted and reluctant to go to the school, and he thought to himself, should I go to school or should I go to the riverside and enjoy myself? But again he decides that he would go and learn his lesson in the school, because he was very afraid. As you see in this road, as he was going, you can see him searching something on his back in the image, because he was so sure that he didn't learn a word in the participles that was given by his teacher as homework, and he had announced that the next day he would be asking the question. That was the fear in his back of his mind. And as he was going along, he saw the crowd on the road, and they were all gathered around near the bulletin board. And this was the bulletin board. For the past 2 years, it had been giving very bad news. As I told you the background, it was during the war. And as he looks at them and he doesn't bother, because he is running towards his school. Seeing this boy, a man that you see in the image, he is a blacksmith, and the name also is mentioned in the chapter. His name is Fateh. And he says, boy, don't run very fast. You have lots of time to reach to your school. Hearing this, the boy thought maybe he is just making fun of him. So he tells him, no, I should not give heed to him. I have to run towards my school. So as he reaches the school, he finds something unusual. As I have given here, Franz notices many unusual things at school. As he steps in the school itself, the compound was very quiet, very silenced. And as well as he reaches his classroom, he finds some of the villagers who were never ever had come to the school. They were seated at the back of the classroom. So seeing that, he was quite surprised. And as what he had planned to his mind is that, as usual, the school will be very noisy, the classroom will be noisy, and teacher will be taking his own class. So quietly he would go and sit in his class unnoticed by anyone. But that didn't happen because it was quiet and it was very serene, and he didn't know why they were sitting there in his classroom. As Franz entered the classroom, he found everything strange. First of all, in Hamel himself, the way he was dressed was quite different from the usual days. He had wore a frilled shirt, a black hat, and the attire was so special that what he used to wear is only during the inspection time. So he was finding everything very strange. So as he enters the classroom, he thought to himself, "No, I'm going to get a good beating from my teacher." But it doesn't happen. What he does is that M. Hamlet calls him and tells him very kindly, "Go and take your seat." So as he goes to sit in his place, there is something that he finds very, very strange. The people that they were seated, whom he had never seen before, and all were old and young, and as well as the kids that they were gathered in the class. As Franz observes the changes around him, he was also quite sure that something serious things had happened in his country. So he hears his teacher announcing that that day was the last lesson for all of them, and that was quite shocking to him. And he also tells that next day he is going to leave the school. So hearing that, he was quite shocked. And not only that, he also announces that the order from Berlin has come to teach only German in Alsace and Lorraine. So that was the order from Berlin. So there he comes to the realization why the people were gathered in that town hall, and they were looking at that bulletin board, and there he comes to understand the seriousness of that gathering. And also he realizes now this teacher, whom he really found quite scary, but he now starts to admire him, and he tells to himself, why did I not spend my time fruitfully or give myself in the learning? Whereas many days he might have gone bunking his class, going to play around near the river, and going to see the birds' eggs or whatsoever. So finding all this and realizing all this, the things that was going on in his mind with regrets, he hears once again M. Hamel telling to himself and telling to the people, I criticize not only myself, but also I criticize even the people of Alsace, he says. Why does he say that? He tells, I criticize myself, I blame myself, because many a times when I wanted my plants to be watered, I have called the students to water the plants, and whenever I wanted to go for fishing, I have given them holidays. Instead of making use of those precious time in teaching our own mother tongue and our language, but I have wasted in vain or in uselessness. So he himself blames, and he also blames the parents because they were not so serious or not given interest in the learning of the children in their language or to learn the French or mother tongue. So that's how he blames to himself, and he also blames to the parents. So that was really very sad moment, not only for him but also for the whole people of Alsace and Lorraine. And you can see in the image here how the people were reacting to this. Thus M. Hamel takes a grammar book and he starts teaching, but there was a pin of silence in the class. And you can see the people, old people who were gathered there. It is only the images that I have put here, but if you really come across, if you really read through by yourself, you'll find how they were so sad and how they were so sorrowful on that particular day. All they were full of emotions, and some they were really couldn't really show what they were going through or how they were feeling at that very moment, because that was the very last day that they would learn their own language. And you can see the sadness in the eyes and in the face of this people. Even M. Hamel was very sad. He sat motionless, and he was really regretting about all the precious moments or times that he didn't make use of. And what happens at the end? The final goodbye. And as the clock 12, when the Angelus bell rang in the church, M. Handel stands in very sorrowful mood, and he wanted to say something actually, but he was choked. He couldn't say anything because he was really full of emotions and sadness. He couldn't say anything. Just what does he say is that he faces towards the board and he writes, Vive la France. Vive la France. That means long live France. And that's how he ends his class, and he summons or he signals the students and people around there. He tells them to leave the class. That's how the whole chapter ends. So to give you the gist of this chapter, once again let me give you in a gist. This story is during just after the war between France and Prussia, and France were defeated by Prussia, and as a result they were forced to speak in German, and even they were forced to learn German in their schools. And that's how the people of France, they come to realize the preciousness of their mother tongue. And those even people who were really wasting their times in like France, we came across a small boy, he really regrets for not learning well. And in fact, I didn't mention to you, in this particular last lesson that M. Hamel takes, Franz tells to himself, within no time he understood whatever he was explaining. So that's how he gives that seriousness and the full attention on that particular day. So he tells to himself, if I could have given that much of attention all through the year, I'm sure I could have learned. So that's how they regrets for not making use of the time given. So that's how the story ends, with really very sorrowful ending.